Hello, these are recordings of classes conducted at a world-class residential recovery centre here in Armidale, New South Wales. My name's Hartmut Günther and I'm fortunate enough to be able to facilitate these classes. So I hope you enjoy them. Great. Any feedback from you guys? You weren't there last week, Anne, and we sort of had a little bit of an introduction to one aspect of mindfulness is called judgment or non-judgment.
I was.
Yeah.
I was here.
She was here. She was here.
You were here.
Yes.
Were you all three there?
Yeah.
Okay.
I think.
Yep.
All right. Yeah, I thought you were away. So did I ask you, Anne, what your thoughts were about judgment and non-judgment? Great.
Yeah, you did. Yeah.
Great. All right. That's fantastic. So there's been a lot going on, obviously, as you can tell, in the last week. So yesterday, are you guys doing all right there? Is everything all right for you? Does anyone want to say that they're challenged or struggling with anything before we start?
Good challenge.
You struggling with?
No, good. You good? I was just going to say good challenge with that.
Yeah. No, it's all right. I think we're going all right.
On top of the world, Heart.
Yeah.
Everything's couldn't be better.
Yeah.
Okay. Go on, Graham.
No, everything's all right, mate. We're getting high on this mountain air. It's invigorating.
Nice way to put it.
A bit of snow yesterday was good to see.
Yeah.
And I haven't seen snow before.
No, I've seen snow before, but not in Armidale. It was the first time, so it was quite a interesting thing for me. I kept taking pictures of it and nearly missed the whole thing. Anne, any feedback? I thought you might have been struggling a bit the other day, but you okay?
Yeah, no, I'm good. I'm good.
Okay.
I found a business course on Insight Timer for meditation.
Yeah.
So it goes for 7 days, and I've only done one day and skipped. I haven't been back on for 3, but I've been doing other meditations. But I mean, I thought that was probably a good place to start.
That's great. That's great. Did you join in our meditation the other day?
I did, yeah.
Yeah. Do you find that easy enough to do or interesting, or do you find challenge with it?
Depends on the day. Like some days my thoughts keep wandering, but you know, you just keep them like to breath and
Yeah.
and I'm doing okay.
Yeah. Yeah. And I know Graham's expressed that he has difficulties. I'm not picking on you, Graham. I'm just saying with the notion of a type of meditation, and really meditation is really just being able to, well, it's two things. It's being able to focus your mind, but then the question then comes, well, what are you focusing your mind on? And then the third thing is, well, if you're focusing your mind on something, what is that thing that you're the process of focusing, and that thing that you're focusing on, what is it doing for you? How is it affecting you? Is it positive? Is it negative? Is it changing you in some way? Is it bringing forth something that you actually enjoy, at least eventually? So these are aspects, you might say. Well, they're aspects of mindfulness, but they're more specific aspects of meditation. So the whole notion of focusing your mind is an interesting thing. And as I said, I know that sometimes you struggle with that, Graham, and as we all do, and as Anne just said as well. So what I thought we'd do is, and please bear with me, I'll tell you a story. And it's an old story, and it goes back a long way. But I heard it also a long time ago from our friend, master storyteller Prem Rawat. I heard it about 30 years ago or something like that. But somehow it came into my memory the other day, and I thought I thought, well, it's relevant. It's relevant. So let me just unfold it for you so we can go. So this is a story of a man, and this man, he lives in a village. It can be any particular time. Can you guys hear me okay?
Yeah.
Okay. So it can be it can be current time, or it can be 1,000 years ago, whatever. So this man he's working on his, he doesn't really have a farm, but he likes gardening, and he's outside, and he's doing some work on some land that he's had, and he's digging it up and ploughing it a bit. And then one day he comes across, while he's doing that, with this lamp. It looks like a lamp. It's an old style lamp, and he'd heard of stories of, Aladdin's lamp and all of that sort of stuff. So he was curious. So he just washed it in some water, washed the dirt off, and he knew of a person in his town or his village that was like an elder, someone who was wise and who knew things. So he thought what he'd do is take this lamp to this wise person, the elder. Elders don't have to be old, by the way. Took the lamp to the person and asked him, "What's the story? What should I do with it?" Because it looked really fascinating. It looked interesting. So he took the lamp to the elder and he asked the elder, "What is this? What can I do with this?" And the elder looked at the lamp and he looked at the man and he said, "Well, you have to you have to be a little bit cautious with this thing, because this thing is designed in such a way that if you rub it and clean it up and then rub it, what will happen is that you will unleash a genie, and the genie will be able to grant any of your wishes." You guys okay so far?
Yeah.
All good? All right. And the man said, "Wow, that's fantastic. All my dreams have come true. This is amazing." And the elder said, "Yeah, well, there's a thing though, thing that you have to be aware of." And the man said, "Well, what's that?" He says, "Well, if you decide to do that and rub this lamp and unleash the genie will grant you all your wishes or anything you want, but you have to keep the genie busy. If you don't keep the genie busy and you run out of things to ask for, the genie will turn around and eat you alive." Like, whoa. And are you guys all right? No one's getting triggered or freaked out too much? You all right?
Yeah.
Good. And the guy said, "Oh, look, no problem. No problem. I can manage that. I can do that." And the elder said, "Well, are you sure? Are you sure you can do that?" And the guy said, "Yep. No worries at all." So they part their ways. The guy goes home, cleans up the lamp nice and beautifully, and then starts rubbing it with his hand. And sure enough, within a minute, this huge genie comes out and appears before the man. And the genie says, "I'm here to grant any of your wishes. What would you like?" And the guy is like, he's got this smile from ear to ear. He's just ecstatic. He says, "Well, please, get me a new car." Now, the genie has magic powers, obviously. That's why he's a genie. And so he's able to manifest things quite quickly. So he manifests basically by just clicking his fingers and manifests this beautiful car, specifically type of car the man asked for. The man thought, whoa, that's quick. So then the man lives in an old sort of rundown sort of shack, and he asked the genie to build him a house. And So the genie says, well, how do you want it? What do you want? And he gets all the details, and the genie starts building the house. Well, within an hour, the whole thing was done. So the guy's thinking, whoa, this is like amazing. And then he starts thinking of all these little things that he needs or wants or has been wishing for his whole life. And he starts explaining these to the genie, and the genie's just fulfilling them really, really quickly. Towards the end of the day, the man starts to get a little bit concerned because of, particularly from what the elder had told him. So he, as it's getting towards nightfall, he's actually struggling to think of things to give the genie to do and what to ask for. So he's getting really worried. And the genie said, well, if you've run out of things for me to do, I'm afraid I'm going to have to eat you. And the guy said, look, just give me half an hour. I'm going to go and see the elder because I don't know what to do here. And the genie says, all right, I'll give you half an hour. And when you come back, if you don't give me something to do, I'm going to have to eat you. So the man goes back quickly to the village and finds the elder and says, look, I should have listened to you. I've got myself into a pickle here. I've run out. I didn't realize the genie would do things that quickly. I've run out of things for him to do. And the elder looks at him in a non-judgmental way and says, okay, I'll help you. He says, what you have to do, you have to go back and you get the genie to get a pole, a long pole, a pole like the pole of an electric pole, that keeps the wires up, a big long pole like that. And then you asked the genie to run up the pole, and when he's gotten to the top, you then ask him to run back down to the bottom. And when he's down the bottom, you ask him to run back up the top of the pole. And you ask the genie to keep doing this until you ask him to stop. And then you might want something from him again. So he will do that. He will keep doing that. And the man said, thank you, thank you, thank you, thank you, thank you, thank you so much. So he goes back, asks the genie to do what the elder said, and they both lived happily ever after. So that's the story. There's anyone like to comment on the theme of that story? What that might possibly be? I'll give you a hint. I thought of that story in relation to Graham.
Did you?
Well, the thing is, he was there. Like, I find it interesting that he was only asking for things for himself. Like, the whole or
He was a
or
single
help.
man, and he didn't have much of a family, I guess. Yeah.
That's not really relevant. I mean, there's still other human beings on the planet.
Nice one.
I just found that he didn't think to
That's
others.
say the old
Yeah. I mean, I could have kept the journey busy creating world peace and, doing all sorts of wonderful things for others, not just for me. That gift, I mean, why wouldn't you share it?
That's right. That's right. That's a really good point. The thing with that genie, it is your instructions had to be quite specific. So if you want to get the genie to create world peace, you would have had to have been quite specific about that. Well, what are you meant to do? So, but that's a really interesting point, Anne.
Yeah.
Okay. So without keeping you in suspense anymore, the story is designed to reflect an aspect of our wandering mind, and our mind that's really never satisfied, that always wants something more, always. So the genie is a representation of our mind. Now, as we've grown up, we've developed created, imbued our mind with these powers, incredible powers that we have. And yet we don't know how to really control it. We don't know how to bring it to our call when we want it, when we want to do something. And if it gets out of control, it basically has the ability and capacity to eat us alive, literally. That's the analogy, that's the metaphor, that's the story behind the thing. So the deeper aspect of it is that, well, you have to figure out some way that when you don't want to use your mind is actually doing something so it doesn't bother you, or your mind is concerned with something or involved with something or focused on something. So the metaphor with that is meditation. Going up and down the pole is a metaphor for actually focusing your mind on your breath and focusing, bringing your breath in and bringing your breath out. Is that okay? It makes sense?
It does. Mm-hmm.
Yeah. So that's, I've never told that story before, so I hope you enjoyed it. I hope it helps you. Well, at least you can remember that. So if your mind is eating you alive one day, maybe that can help you in those particular times. Any questions? Any feedback? Otherwise, we'll just go through some of these slides that I had. I wrote it down. So I've probably got enough material in these slides for another 3 classes to do with judgment, but maybe we'll just go through it, and please speak up. I don't want to just be here projecting and presenting slides. So, so first of all, I'll just turn that on. Screen on, share. Now, you guys are only looking at the computer screen, but can you actually see that?
Yeah.
Yeah.
You can still read it?
Yeah.
Okay, that's great. Just before we go on to it, I like to sort of plan ahead a little bit, and maybe Anne, because Graham and Michael, what you're seeing there, I don't know, can you read all the words on that little picture there? Anne?
Yeah.
Can you read the
Yes.
words? Oh, you can. Okay. You're probably reading them all while I asked you. That's fair enough. So what Graham has and Michael have both chosen some aspect. That picture is a representation I've come up with of some of the aspects of mindfulness. So rather than me choose, every week what we're going to talk about, I'm asking you to choose something. So Anne, maybe for next week, something on there that jumps out that you're interested in. And I'll just tell you what we've already spoken about. We've already spoken about vulnerabilities. And by the way, if you want to listen to previous classes, you can jump on my YouTube channel, because I've been recording these like I am today. And then people can get benefit from that, from listening to them again. So we've done vulnerabilities, not that we've exhausted it, but we've done that. We've done awareness. And today we're hopefully might be finishing with judgment or non-judgment. But anything on that little mandala type journey into the center, which is basically the culmination, is being as conscious as we can and knowing as much about ourselves as we can. And hopefully by doing that, we can experience a little bit more gratitude and some meaning in our life. So Anne, anything on there that jumps out, or that you'd like to talk about, or that you don't even understand what it is, and that's fair enough, because I've written all this down. So anything?
Well, I'm interested in the psyche.
The psyche.
Not that I know much about it, but I'm curious.
No one does. The psychoanalyst 100 years ago knew a lot about the psyche, but now the psyche has been turned into psychology, and that's fine. And I learnt all about that doing my psychology degree. But if that's what you'd like to focus on, we can do that. So is everyone else okay with that if we have a look at that next week?
Yep.
So in that capacity, rather than me just talk about it, if you could all think, particularly Anne, what it is that you think that means or what that is. And you can spend some time looking it up. If you put psyche into Google,
Yeah.
you better buckle yourself in because that's a wild ride as well. Yeah, so have a look at that and then we can talk about that next week.
Okay.
So we already covered this little bit last week. And I just wrote there, what does judgment mean to you? What about the notion of cultivating a non-judgmental and non-reactive approach to the present moment, which is basically, if you ask any mindfulness practitioners or psychologists, that's what they come up with. That is part of the definition of mindfulness. So I'm not going to go. So I'm just going to, so with this aspect that we're covering right now, it's really designed to get you to think about things and maybe engage and ask some questions. It's not, this is not like a course where you have to remember what these slides say and all that. We're adults, but as adults, we still have a heart of a child and we're curious and we'd like to know things, and not everything is working as well as it could. I know you all said everything's fine, but I know, because I'm a human, and I know that you're humans, that we have problems, we have challenges, and sometimes things work and sometimes things don't work. So all of this is designed really to get us to think about things. So is judgment, I'm asking you these questions, is judgment harmful? Is it necessary for survival? Why do we do it? Is it an indication of perhaps a fixed mindset? And what even is a fixed mindset? Anyone want to tackle any one of those things or comment on any of those?
Well, the two first questions, is it harmful and is it necessary for survival?
Yeah.
I think to some degree, I think it is harmful because I feel that we should be moving in a direction where we're less judgmental, or not judging, everything and everyone, and
Yeah.
because
Are
we're all individuals, is different. But at the same time, when it says it's necessary for survival, to some degree, maybe it is. I mean, because if you're not judging what's going on around you, you can end up in a mess.
That's right.
You know what I'm saying?
That's right. Just let me ask you one thing, Anne. When you said it'd be useful for us or good for us to be less judgmental, do you mean in your capacity for yourself? What are you talking about? Being less judgmental of yourself or of others, or both?
Both.
Right.
Yeah,
so
both.
you feel that in yourself.
Yes.
Okay.
Yeah.
Later on in the slides, we'll discern, and in actual fact, discernment is part of judgment. In that sense, it may be necessary. It can be necessary for survival, because you can't.
Yeah.
I guess the antithesis is perhaps being naive. So, anything you want to comment on there, Graham?
I was just thinking that, well, the opposite of judgment would be acceptance, wouldn't it?
Hey, that's really cool. You have just jumped forward 3 slides or more. Good on you.
Well, I've always thought like judgment is usually there's a negativity about it. Judgment, you know, you're looking at someone and you're comparing them to your own beliefs and values or whatever in a negative sense, and same as if someone does it to you, it doesn't feel good to be judged.
Mm.
It's normally picking out something that, if someone judges me, they're normally picking out something they don't like about me, and then I feel self-conscious about that.
Yeah.
It's nice to be able to accept one another.
Yeah.
Than be judging one another. Oh, you're me, you know.
Yeah.
What's going on in the United States at the moment is people judging each other.
Yeah.
It opens up a big kettle of being judged on the colour of their skin and, you know, all this sort of stuff. It opens up a whole bunch of toxic shit.
Yeah. That is so true. All of that is so true.
Acceptance. They say in the fellowship, acceptance is the key to all our problems.
That what fellowship is that in AA? You mean?
In recovery.
Yeah.
It's throughout the book of Alcoholics Anonymous and all that other literature that is in, you know, in the fellowship, Narcotics Anonymous and all that.
Yeah.
Recovery is based on acceptance and that sort of stuff. Yeah.
Yeah.
Rather than being judged. Look for the good points, not the bad.
Yeah.
The similarities are not the differences. Yeah.
That's so good. And interwoven in what you're saying there is there's some philosophy in there. And it was the same with what Anne said. In other words, it would be good if the people in America weren't so judgmental of each other's skin and race and all of that. Of course, that goes back a long way. So some things have to change there. And that's why I've got their indication of a fixed mindset. Fixed mindset is actually a term that psychology has actually looked at reasonably closely. And it's not an easy thing to change. So being mindful, becoming more conscious, knowing ourselves in what we're doing and how, the first step is to even be aware of the fact that we're actually judging. We're judging someone else or that we're judging ourselves. So perhaps and I've got some really interesting sort of literature examples later on, but because you brought up recovery there, one of the important aspects there is to self-judgment. Because if we get too heavily into judging ourselves, it pushes us in a direction that can be harmful to ourselves, because then it becomes unbearable. And I just want to, what's that? Go on, Graham.
I was just saying, it's very true.
Yeah.
As you know, as addicts, I think we judge ourselves a lot. I judge myself to the shit house.
Yeah.
I'm my own judge, jury, and executioner.
Yeah, right. And you haven't even bought the bloody durians.
No one judges me harder than I judge myself.
Yeah, fair enough. And I'll give you a real world example of myself, because even though I'm facilitating these classes does not mean I'm exempt from anything that we're talking about. And to make that point even more clearly, I'll just give you an example of what happened to me yesterday. I had an experience a couple of days ago. It was quite profound and very deep and illuminating. But then it was almost like a backlash. Yesterday, I had most of the day, I found it extremely difficult to function. I normally rely a lot on motivation, and I got into the habit of being motivated and focused, particularly when I did my psychology degree in the last few years, because you have to be very motivated and focused. But yesterday was an interesting day, and without even describing how or why, because in the absence of the how or why, we tend to even judge ourselves even more. And I don't feel down that much. Every now and then I do feel down, but yesterday I felt quite down. Not so much depressed down, but down in the sense that I just was not motivated to do anything. And it was like a culmination of both the fact that I had so much that I wanted to do or needed to do. So I was a little bit overwhelmed. But then on the other hand, I just wasn't motivated. It's not as if I was tired. There was just a resistance. There was an incredible resistance in me. So my conscious mind, my cognitive capacities were there and they were telling me I had to do all these things and this had to happen. But I was suffering profound resistance. And in that space, man, was I judging myself. And if something is novel or unusual or that you don't really understand it or what's happening to you, we become extremely vulnerable to judging ourselves. So I'm sure you can all relate to that, but I just wanted to share that with you. And the only way, it's all past now, but it dragged on right into the night, honestly. And all I could do was just do one little impossible thing at a time, as Captain Picard from Star Trek says, one small impossible thing at a time, which is what I just did. And then without knowing, and all I was doing was judging myself, kept saying, what are you doing? Why are you like this? I became extremely aware of that resistance. And then something happened. I read a book. Just before I go on with that, and this is, I think this is what's happening with a lot of people. And Graham, you brought up America. This aspect of judging others, of course, comes from the fact that we're not fully aware of judging ourselves. But there's so much uncertainty. And even though I'm here and I'm working right now, there's a lot of uncertainty. And I spoke, for instance, to Elodie, who's coordinating and almost the CEO there at Freeman House. And it's like, it's quite uncertain with the funding and everything that's happening there. And I don't know. So even if I'm going to be able to facilitate these programs in the next 2 weeks. So there's that uncertainty there. And that contributes to some degree to, some hopelessness sometimes. And that state that I was in yesterday. So I certainly didn't invite that state. And I certainly couldn't pinpoint any one thing that I even could say, well, I did this wrong. So therefore, I'm suffering because of what I did wrong. And in the absence of knowing that, the judgment even gets turned up louder. Does that make sense for you guys?
Yeah.
Yep.
So when and if you find yourself, that was pretty severe for me. But I guess one of the things that helped me was that wasn't the first time in my life that I had experienced what I went through yesterday. And so having experienced it before, I knew that there was an end to it. I didn't quite know how long it would take, but I knew there was an end to it. So that I hung in there basically with that. So, and then without going into a whole lot of detail, it tended to resolve itself later on into the night. And then I slept quite well and I woke up incredibly inspired with new ideas of what to do in these times of uncertainty. So sometimes that, and I'm a bit of a spoiler here for Anne because she's chosen Psyche for next week. It's almost felt like my psyche was being rearranged. And I'm not even going to say what that means or anything, but that's sort of what it felt like. And in that rearrangement process, there was a lot of self-judgment, a lot of some concern, anxiety perhaps, but yeah, able to come out the other end. And after the rearrangement, sort of like, you know, when you clean up your house and you rearrange things and it looks better than it did actually before. So that's a little bit of what happened there. So I thought I'd just share that with you, just in case you were thinking that I'm a god amongst men. No, I'm only kidding. but just that I'm vulnerable and I'm a human being. Anyone want to say anything?
I think it's interesting that you talk about that whole day that you had yesterday. My daughter had a similar day in that she returned to work the day before yesterday, and she's new to the workforce. So, and prior to the lockdown, she was, for the first time, I would have to say, probably in her young adult life, she was doing really well, was really confident, independent, and then suddenly she lost her 2 jobs and was restricted to her home. And so the day before yesterday, she went back to work and did a shift, and she works in the club industry, you know, in gaming industry at the time while she's studying. And yesterday she went back for day 2, and she just messaged me and said, well, you know, because I messaged her every day, and I said, how was your first day back at work? I've got no answer. Second day after, and she said, well, you know, day 1 went fine, but day 2 I got in there and I just felt so overwhelmed, and she felt blocks or like blockages all day, like she couldn't concentrate and lost her train of thought, and she ended up going home.
Yeah.
And I straight away said to her, you know, it's okay, you know, were they understanding at work? And everybody responds differently to this whole situation.
Yeah.
But she, I mean, knowing her like I do, so personally, I know that she would have been sitting there full of judgment on herself.
Yeah.
And, you know, I guess this whole, because this isn't the norm, really. It's not what we're used to.
Yeah.
And I mean, so, I mean, it affects everybody differently, doesn't it?
That's right. Hopefully, is she going back to work today?
Yeah, as far as I know.
Great, great.
Yeah.
So you have to be a little bit perseverant and develop, sort of live through, as I was explaining, that because uncertainty and self-judgment, and as Graham was saying, feeling judged by others, and sometimes you can feel judged by others and they're not actually judging you, because most of the time we're so consumed with ourselves, we're too busy to judge other people, but sometimes we do. So I don't know if it's helpful for her that you can give her the link. I'm going to post this class, for instance, today, and it might help her, it might not, but she's welcome to have a look at it as well. So we're not going to get through the whole class today, so we'll just, because I never know the depth entirely of what happens during these classes until we actually start having the class and there's an interaction there. And sometimes what is designed as one class turns into 3 or 4 classes on this one particular subject. So if it's all right with you, and we'll start introducing the notion of psyche as well next week, but let's finish the class, because I see Michelle's sitting up the back there as well. And we've gone a bit over time just because of what's been happening. What is it, Michelle? Should we finish or go for another 5 minutes or so? What's your feeling?
Guys are happy to do. These guys are happy to keep going for another 5 minutes. I'm happy with that. That's fine.
Yeah, okay. Yeah, you all seem pretty attentive. Okay, well let's go see if we can burn up a few more slides and see how far we get. All right, I'll just put the slide back on. The interesting thing with this program is you have to keep turning the slides on and off. But the reason I turn it off is so that I can see your faces more clearly, because when the slide's on, I can only see a small screen with all of you in it there. So judgment, the ability to make considered decisions or come to sensible conclusions. So these are some of the ways that we use the word judgment in our society and our community. The judge has to pass down a judgment. So if you go through courts, you end up in jail. You end up in jail if there's a jury or there's a judge, and even if there is a jury, the judge has to make a decision, and he judges you, or judges not so much you, but judges your actions. in the context of law. So judgment has a part to play in our society. Judgment, criticize or condemn someone from a position of assumed moral superiority. I got these things just from the dictionary. So moral superiority. Anyone want to say anything about that?
Yeah, I can't say I have a great deal of time for someone like that. Sorry.
We should all assess, and I think this touches on some of the aspects of the 12 steps, looking at how, what is our position in the scheme of things in regards to how we feel where we are in relation to other people, and that is one aspect. So it's an interesting thing to look at that. Now, as we've already spoken, we can all tend to judge ourselves, and judging ourselves as too young, too old, too fat, too speedy, too loud, too dumb, too ugly, too fat, too different, and on and on and on it goes. It's a dis-ease. I like to look at words, and when you do this, you certainly do not feel at ease with yourself. So in that sense, all of this self-judging is a disease of comparing ourselves, neglecting ourselves, worried about what others think, and not knowing ourselves. So embedded in that, in the actions that we do when we judge ourselves, is some of the pathways out. In other words, if we're neglecting ourselves, well, don't neglect yourself. If you're comparing yourself, well, stop it. And if you're worried about what others think, these are all things that we have to, it doesn't matter how old we are, we're still vulnerable to these things. And of course, the more that we know ourselves, the more resilient we can become, and the quicker we can get over some of these things that bother us. So judgment, part of the background noise between our ears. In other words, what's going on there in your head that's ever ready to judge. This involves feeling sorry for, stereotyping, prejudice, as this is what Graham was saying, what's going on in America, prejudice based on size, gender, colour, race, religion, wealth, and general looks and appearance, judging others. So we look at judging ourselves, but then, and how do you know that you are judging others? Again, a little anecdotal experience from myself. I was just driving through Armidale the other day, and I saw these two people talking over a fence, and one person was on the side of the house, and this person looked very poor, like was disheveled, the quality of her clothes. I took all this in a few seconds, which is exactly what we do. And then, because obviously I'm trying to know myself and practice what I preach in regards to being mindful of what is actually going on between my ears at any particular time. I'm not saying I do all the time, but I noticed, oh my goodness, I am judging this person. I am making a stereotypical judgment of what they might even be talking about or thinking about. I thought that is so disgusting, really, when you catch yourself out to some degree. Doesn't mean I can stop straight away, but at least I became aware of it. I think the best way to start changing something that you don't like is to become aware of it, that aspect of yourself. And sometimes that might take years. But and of course, perhaps I've even was even aware of that because I've often been proved wrong. My judgments of people, my assessment based on how they look, have nearly always proved wrong.
I've had the same situation many times, you know. Yeah. And in fact, people that I've judged as being possibly my type of people to hang out with or spend time with, more often than not, it's the dishevelled person who doesn't look like they're doing very well, but that I end up more connected with, you know, rather than the person who's great and talks well and is educated, and
Yeah.
I feel more connected. You know, that's not judging a book by its cover.
That's right.
It's really when you take all the stuff on the outside, we all bleed the same colour, and I mean.
That's very good. We do. Mostly. There might be some tints in there of the red colour, but pretty much we do. This is exactly what Graham was saying, and that's why I said he jumped ahead a few slides. Non-judgmental, I wrote this. I'm not saying that's the dictionary definition, but it seemed to me that is pretty close to it. If you're not judging, you're accepting. It's pretty hard to accept someone if you're judging. So that there's that aspect there. And the good aspect of judgment, as we touched on before, is judgment equals discernment. So that's again, as Graham was saying, there's negative and positive aspects to judgment. So one perhaps survival aspect and a positive aspect is to discern something. Discern is like discriminate, but in a positive way, not discriminate based on color or religion, but more accurately to pull apart, to differentiate, like judge something it equals discernment. When you're discerning something, you're really looking at it in reality to what's going on, and not just based on what you think or your past experiences. But discerning something means that you can actually look deeper into it. And you can get some more context, more historical context to it. You know, when you see someone doing something you don't like, your immediate reaction is that you judge that because you don't like it. But if you don't know the context of what's going on, well, you know, if you see a mother yelling very loudly at a young child that's standing on the edge of the road, well, I don't like that. But the child's about to step out and get hit by a car. So there's a context, there's a discernment that has to happen as well. So that's what I'm just bringing up there. So it's not all negative. And Graham made those points really well. There's some more interesting things, but we might leave that, I think, till next week. I've interspersed some of these slides. When I prepared the course for mindfulness, I came across this artist, Greg Dunn, and he's a neuroscientist, and he scans brains that have been meditating. Not scan them and kill people and cut them up, but I mean doing like CAT scans and PET scans and things like that. And he's done some artistic representation of what the changes that happen in a person's brain when they are going through the process and going deeper into meditation. So that's what that is. So might leave that for today. So obviously we haven't got time to actually do a meditation today, but as I often say, it's encouraged for you to do that yourself, and maybe next week we'll do that as well. Any feedback? Any questions? Graham?
No.
No?
Not really, mate.
Great.
No.
Thank you. I really enjoyed today's class. Thank you for being here. And thank you for being patient with Michelle and the technology. See you on Friday if you're coming to the nutrition class, and it's all about energy.
Oh, thank God. Love it. Anything to do with that? Thank you.
No worries. See you later. Thanks so much.
Yeah.
Take care.